Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. This is Maro, and today I wanted to share another replay. This time it is Z-23. I still have a few lines where I did not make it to tier 10. To be exact, including the new US battleship line, there are 10 lines left out of 31. And this is prior to the Italian BB introduction. So one of them is obviously the German destroyer line, and that brings us back to Z-23, Tier 8 German destroyer. So far, I've played 21 games and got a 67% win ratio, 39,000 average damage, 31,000 or so spotting damage, 76% survival rate, so I guess I'm playing it quite conservatively, and around maybe 400k potential damage. In comparison to other DDs that I've played in this tier, it seems I'm doing pretty well in Z23. Now, some of that could be because of it's not really a lot of games, so things can change, but it is what it is. Now, as usual, I kind of looked at the maple syrup website just to see for North America, I think the third quarter, just to see how the stats line up. And I can see that, German destroyers are not getting a lot of love from, I guess, from World of Warships primarily. But also in terms of playing time, they're maybe somewhere in the middle. I think the ones that really get a lot of play time are Akizuki, Kagero, obviously Benson, and Oland as well. So I think those four are like, for example, 134 battles over the past quarter, 134,000, 130, 140, and Z-23 is like 70,000, so a lot less. But also in terms of results, just under 50% victory percentage, damage around 28,000. It's a survival rate of what, 25% it seems. So they're doing very poorly. So I guess the fact that I'm doing as well as I am is a surprise to me because when I'm playing the destroyer, I don't really feel like, I'm doing great or I am, I really kind of own the map or anything like that. It always feels that I'm kind of tentatively sailing, trying to spot for my team, trying to use some of that hydro that the German line is famous for, and so on. So the fact that the results look as good as they do, it almost makes me think it's more of a fluke than anything else. But nevertheless, I think, as I mentioned, the German destroyer line, it's known for its long-range hydro. So it's 5 kilometers for ships, 3.5 kilometers for torps. Um, it also, you know, has decent torps. It's 9.5 kilometer range. I think it's every 90 seconds or so reload. So, nothing great, but decent enough. Two launchers for torps each. So here I'm just standing and looking at this Atago, kind of really having a very, very hard time there. I mean, that was like, one quick reduction in hit points. So I just wanted to make sure that she doesn't make it out of there, and it seems I didn't really have to because the Pan-European destroyer Vasteros just showed up. So I smoke up here a little. Not sure I really needed to do that here. I think it would have been better if I just kept going. But at the time, I think I was concerned about North Carolina and the other battleships from the top kind of damaging me. Anyway, so to go back, and I guess this is one of the things with this destroyer line that makes it uneasy for me to play them and just makes it feel like you're always, kind of barely doing any damage, and it's the guns. So you get two options. You get the 128 millimeter four guns, or you get 550 millimeter guns. And what I have here is 550 millimeter guns, but they fire only every 6.5 seconds. So that's really, you know, it's not that often. So the DPM on the ship is pretty low. I think the HE is just under 100,000, making it solidly like in the bottom tier. And I think the AP does better because of the AP shells. But even then, I think maybe you double it or so. It's still not a great DPM output. So here I get lucky and I get the destroyer, which I guess worked out in the end. One destroyer less is always good. But I think there were quite a few errors that I just committed there from, the way I launched torps, the way I got caught out in terms of concealment. And I think that happens to me a few times. The concealment on this ship is 6.2 kilometers, so it's pretty bad. I think it's probably, almost French, and I guess maybe Akizuki have the worst concealment. Everybody else is better. And that's just in the same tier. So it makes it really hard, I guess, to outspot others, and it forces you to rely on your smoke and hydro to do anything. But so far, I haven't really figured out a very good way to take advantage of that, because you always have to close in on the destroyer. You're always maybe exposed where you are spotted, and the red team can shoot at you, and you still don't know where the destroyer is. And I only have a 13-point captain on the ship, so I don't really have the radio location either. So I think that may be something that is useful here, even more so, to allow you to get closer and then use your smoke and hydro to, hopefully engage the destroyer. And that's only if the destroyer is headed your way, because it makes it hard to engage the destroyer if they're kiting away. They'll be out of your hydro range pretty fast. But it should nevertheless help with capping, and that's something where there is no radar, or the radar ship is not close, that could be useful, because 5 kilometers gives you good enough coverage to be able to come into the cap and just keep everybody else out. So that's a plus. So here I'm trying to take advantage of that of those HE shells, and start some fire on this North Carolina. The good thing about the 150 guns is that they have a quarter pen value, so it should be around 38 millimeters. And when it comes to North Carolina, it's 32, 38, 32 in terms of the top deck, and 32 millimeter on the sides. So I should be able to do some damage, although I'm not really landing a lot of shells here. And ultimately, I wasn't able to start a fire here. And I fired my torps because I expected North Carolina to kind of continue to go back and then maybe straighten out. But I think he did the smart thing, because there's really no one here. He decided to go around the island and keep this flank to himself. So I try to create some distance between me and the North Carolina here. I think in terms of speed, the ship's top speed is 37 knots. You get the speed boost, which is I think 8%. And then if you have a flag, you may be able to get it above 40. I think maybe close to 42 knots. I don't really have a flag here, just a speed boost. So I think it's closer to 40 knots, which it's okay. It's not great, 37 knots. It's nothing to write home about, but it's enough to do what you need to do. I think the smoke is also, good enough. It's not like super long-lasting smoke like the American smoke, but it's not a short smoke like a British destroyer line either. So something in between, and good enough for what you need to do. In terms of life, uh, you really start with good, um, good health pool. You start with I think 22.3k. This is if you have the survivability expert, and I think that's second only to Akizuki, I believe. But the problem with that is that there are quite a few destroyers that actually get a heal in this tier. So then that gets you to maybe a top third in terms of placement within the tier 8. And tier 8 is a very busy tier when it comes to destroyers. You really have quite a few of them. I think just looking at different versions and so on, I think I made it almost to 20 destroyers, I believe. So quite a lot of destroyers at this tier. And while Z-23 plays a little bit differently than others, I guess primarily because of the Hydro and so on, I have to say it wasn't really super enjoyable to play. It was always more like trying to stay at a distance, you know, trying to maybe spot. I think I'm really lucky here that the CB didn't engage me because my AA is pretty bad. Um, it's it only kicks in at 3.5 kilometers. It doesn't have any flak, so in terms of protection, it's minimal. In any case, in terms of playstyle, or at least the way that I've been playing it, I have not figured out an effective use of that AP. I've tried to rely, I guess, on HE, obviously, when engaged with destroyers, occasionally trying to shoot at the battleships and looking to start some fires. 9.5k torps, they're fine in situations where there is no radar or other destroyers. Otherwise, it starts to get very tricky in terms of getting the right positioning to be able to score a lot of damage. So here I see that my battleship is engaging mines. I'm almost would like to engage these mines, but I do know that there is another Z-23 in the smoke there, so I don't want to reveal myself yet. I fired the torps, but I'm not sure that they're going to really work because Z-23 has Hydro, and there it is, I just ran into it. So I activate my Hydro and I see that he's running away from my torps, and now I look to engage him. So now his guns are pointing at the battleship, and that works to my advantage because the turret traverse in this class is not really that fast, and it takes some time for her to be able to turn her guns around. And at this point, we are just very close, and I'm in a very good position to try and inflict as much damage as I can. Now, I have, I think, 5 guns, and I guess here I scored 4 hits, but in terms of damage, it just feels like it's chip damage, chip damage. I mean, the period between salvos is just so long. And finally, this slow destroyer encounter ends. So now um, we're in a good position here to really win. Um, the battleships are just east of me. Our destroyer is trying to cap uh, A, or actually no, their spawn. They have Bismarck and the CV. Bismarck is headed, I guess, towards the destroyer to prevent him from capping. Queen Elizabeth is there as well. So I'm just trying to get closer there and see if I can position myself to do some additional damage and launch torps and so on. In retrospect, could have potentially gone straight for the CV. Would have been maybe better, but in retrospect, you can always play a lot of things differently. So I am closing in on finishing the grind to tier 9, and I've been playing it. I've been playing the destroyer, and I guess I've been having results that seem to be better than what I usually get or what I've gotten with the other DDs. But in terms of fun factor and in terms of how enjoyable this line is for me to play, it's really not that enjoyable. I mean, right now, I would probably put it with, I actually think even French line, which is kind of difficult for me to play well, seems to be more entertaining because at least there is a challenge of trying to, overcome your bad concealment and engage the targets and, use your guns. The British destroyers, I think they offer a lot more in this tier, but even, higher tiers. I guess you have Lightning at tier 8. I think Benson which is played a lot, and according to those maple syrup stats, it's really doing very poorly in terms of win ratio and damage and so on. But it feels like it offers a much more engaging playstyle because you have a high rate of DPM, you have torps that are, okayish. You have some speed, and it feels like you're doing damage, you're engaged in combat, you're active participant here. Everything feels deliberate and measured, and kind of maybe just enough to do something slow paced. It's honestly makes me kind of worry about the tier 9 and tier 10 ships, how they're going to be, because the grind and the experience that's required to kind of keep moving goes up. And if it's not that enjoyable, it's gonna make it hard to keep going. But at least as far as this game is concerned, and I've had, I think, quite a few games like this. I mean, here the damage is more than what I usually get, but there is this feeling that I'm surprised that we won in a way, because sometimes I will just be on that one flank. I will engage with the red team that's on that flank, and it would be what you expect. You kind of get a little bit closer, you get a little further, you try to fire your torps, you try to get some smoke in between. You try to spot for your team, but it's just you kind of, the game ends and you're like, oh wow, we won. But in terms of excitement, in terms of being on the edge, or really kind of doing things that stay with you, it doesn't happen that often. It's more, I guess, workman like, if I can say that. So I feel it's a drawback. And now, given how the line is doing, and I guess how long the line's been around, perhaps something could be done to potentially uh, improve how well the line does. Because I looked at the stats across the servers for this destroyer, because on the EU server the ship is obviously a lot more played. I think it was close to Benson levels in the US, and I guess there is just a regional preference when it comes to the ships from their nations, and people like to play them. And even if maybe they don't do as well in the ship, just because it's got sentimental value, enjoyable, and so on, which I guess makes sense. But in terms of stats, how well the ship is doing, it was all very close. So it's not really regional thing. I think it's just the players and what the ship is capable of doing, that when you put the two together, you get the results, which is what the ship delivers. So here now, I think in the game, we're at the end. The CV is just hanging back there. I'm trying to see if I can get closer to maybe do some more damage. I'm hoping that Hatsuzu is gonna stay on their cap, which will provide me with unique opportunity to maybe just get very close, use my torps. I was expecting the CV to perhaps, I don't know, go back versus where the CV was, but it seems the CV is just sitting there, and I can see now that the Hatsu is, uh, targeting it targeting the ship with her guns as well. But it is a Japanese destroyer, so how much damage can she do? I guess it's questionable. Although I think that health pool is shrinking fast enough. And now I see the torps coming from the right, so those are Hatsuharu's torps. I have HE loaded, and obviously I didn't think of everything, but then once I got a little closer, I was like, oh, maybe I should switch to AP, and as you can see here, it just takes a very long time to get those AP shells. So, but I'm able to send one salvo. I land 3 pens, which is kind of strange given the distance and how close we were, but it is what it is. So that ends the game. Uh, Again, overall, the results were fine of the in the game, and I've had quite a few games like this where we win, but it's always a surprise to me that we won, and the experience of playing the ship just doesn't doesn't carry the enough excitement, or it doesn't give you enough adrenaline to feel like, yes, it was a great game, we won, I did this. It just doesn't have that. It really kind of leaves you on the flat side. But I'm hoping that the higher tiers are going to turn that around, and it's going to be better and more exciting going forward. So with that, I wish you the best of luck on the high seas. If you like the video, please don't forget to hit the button or subscribe. Best of luck. Maro out.